Around the world, thousands of tribes exist, isolated from the modern world. Many have tried to make contact and learn the lives and practices, but not all visitors live to tell the tale. Well, if you've ever wondered just how many times people have tried, then look no further, because I'm here with the top 10 people who came into contact with terrifying tribes and never returned. Coming in at our number 10 spot, FUNAI Agent. Located in the Amazonian jungle, the Caribou tribe is estimated to have a population of roughly 150 people and are definitely not a tribe to visit. While there have been previous successful attempts at making contact with the Caribou people, on August 2nd, 1997, a member of Brazil's FUNAI Agency, which is a government group dedicated to the protection of isolated communities, attempted to make contact with the group, trying to establish peaceful relations with the community. But this man would not make it out alive. In fact, in over a decade, the FUNAI lost 7 of its men in an attempt to make contact with the Caribou people, and finally decided they would no longer try. The government still provides them with modern immunizations and established their community as a national park in order to halt logging. Not much else is known of the isolated group, as the government will not let any anthropologists visit in fear they may not return. Next up at number 9, Benedict Allen. While on his second trip to visit the Yafo people, a remote Papua New Guinea tribe with little to no contact with the outside world, after being dropped off by a helicopter to the remote land, he trekked for 3 weeks into the forest, hoping to track down the people who he had met years prior in 1988. He did actually eventually find the community once again, but not long after suddenly seemed to have disappeared. And the media outlets had no clue where Allen was, or even if he was still alive. Famously, he said to not come looking for him if he was thought to be missing, though this request was not followed by the media. Now, I will level with you, he was actually eventually found. But he wasn't happy with the outcome, as he insisted he was not lost and did not want to be saved. But ill with malaria, he accepted the help and was flown out to a hospital. Coming in at number 8, 1950s Mennonites. Located in Bolivia and the Paraguay, the Oreo people are a very isolated group. About 5,000 members remain in the community, and while their current threat is deforestation, you also don't want to take your chances visiting this community. Their first known contact with outsiders was way back in the 40s and 50s, when a large group of Mennonite farmers forcibly took their land to raise pigs. Well, as you can imagine, this did not go over well, and many were killed by the Oreo people. Later again, in 1986, a group of missionaries attempting to evangelize the community was not well appreciated, and 5 men did not make it out alive. Long story short, just leave them alone and they'll leave you alone. Next up at number 7, Don Phillips and Bruno Pereira. In an attempt to write a novel on how to help save the Amazonian rainforest, journalist Don Phillips and an indigenous rights activist, Bruno Pereira, headed into the lawless jungle and never returned. After being reported missing for a few weeks, remains of the 2 men were actually found, but who or what killed them in the depths of the jungle is unknown. Some believe it could have been a tribe defending their land, while others have theorized it could have been other intruders, as the 2 men were writing a novel revealing the dark underbelly of the area. Whatever it was, I think it's safe to say it's best to keep out of the isolated communities, or you run the risk of never being seen again. Next up at number 6, Nicolas Flores. Largely gathered in Peru, the Mashapiro tribe is estimated to have between 100 and 250 members, and they are considered extremely dangerous to any outsider. In 2012, in fact, archaeologist Diego Cortillo visited the isolated community in an attempt to learn and get pictures of the Mashapiro people, which he did, and they were released later in a Survival International. However, it was his local guide Nicolas Flores who was found dead 6 days later with a bamboo-tipped arrow struck through his heart. Most likely meant as a sign to ward off further intruders, as the clan likely fears being killed by disease or having their communities taken over by outsiders, as has been attempted in the past. Either way, best to just steer clear. Next up at number 5, Riele Franciscato. Now, not too long ago, in June of 2020, a longtime member of FUNAI and an expert of the Amazonian attempted to make contact with the Uru-i-Wau-Wau territory in Rondonia. His life mission was to protect these people, and though he was known to make successful and peaceful attempts with other communities in the past, this time he would not be so lucky. Likely thought to be an attacker by the local tribe, as is often the case in their experience with many poachers and illegal loggers known to frequent the area. Franciscato was shot through the heart with a bow and arrow and left for dead. A witness claims that Riele cried out and actually pulled the arrow from his chest and began to run away, but not long after collapsed. It seems like no matter what your motives might be, that these people do not want you there, so let's just all agree to stop trying. Next up, at number 4, Alejandro, Lavaca, and Ines, Arango. Located in Ecuador, the Tigray people live a hunting and foraging lifestyle and have long resisted outsiders in their community. Most notably, back in 1987, when a bishop, Alejandro Lavaca, and his sister, Ines Arango, decided to travel to the area in hopes to preach Christianity to the locals. They were dropped off by helicopter and planned to be picked up a few days later, but as I'm sure you've guessed, this would not be the case. A few days went by and the helicopter pilot came back to retrieve the bishop and his sister, only to find them brutally killed, their corpses laid out as a warning sign to intruders. Do not come back. This would not stop people, however, as recently as 2008, a man was found in the area with 9 iron-headed spears jutting out of his stomach. Coming in at number 3, John Allen Chau. Likely the most well-known of the isolated clans, the Sentinelese people live on a wooden island in the Indian Ocean and are fierce protectors of their home. The community made headlines when, in 2018, even though it was and still is illegal to visit this tribe, an American missionary named John Allen Chau ignored all laws and decided he would still visit the indigenous people to spread the word of God. He managed to bribe several fishermen in order to reach the island, and as was completely expected, the Sentinelli assassinated him not too long after his arrival, likely with bows and arrows. All the fishermen that helped Chau in his mission were arrested, and the island remains illegal to all visitors. Next up at number 2, we have Helena Valero. Okay, so this one is kind of cheating because she did in fact return, but this story is so crazy I had to include it on the list. Back in the 1930s, a young girl named Helena Valero was kidnapped at just 13 years old when her family was attacked by a nearby tribe. Helena lived near the Amazon forest with her farmer parents, but once captured was taken to live with a tribe known as Shemateri. Helena accidentally gave poisonous toad eggs to one of the other children, and that child's father found out and threatened to kill her, so she ran away deeper into the forest where she lived for 7 months. Eventually, she ended up reaching a new tribe called the Namote, but was not welcome at first, so once again, she fled back into the woods, believing they were going to kill her. But things took a turn when later she was caught by the head man of the tribe and ended up actually falling in love with and marrying him, becoming his 3rd wife. Years went by and Helena had 2 children with the chief, but sadly, he was killed by an opposing tribe. This threatened Helena and the life of her children. Scared for her and her children's life, she fled with them to another nearby tribe, uninvolved with the feud, and eventually married again. Unlike her previous marriage, however, her second husband was not kind to her, but still she gave him 2 more children. Her life takes a turn when the tribe that killed her first husband relocated near her once again, and Helena, fearing for her life and terribly unhappy in her marriage, escaped to live among white men again. But rather shockingly, upon her return to her previous home, she was rejected by her family and living in poverty and not well taken care of at all. Helena eventually decided life was better among the Yanomami people and returned to live out the remainder of her life there. Coming in our number 1 spot is Michael Rockefeller. Located in South Papua, Indonesia, the Otsjanup village belongs to the Asmat people, and unlike some of the others on this list, they're not actually widely known as being specifically violent or dangerous. In fact, in modern times, while still very isolated, they've been known to seek out higher education and incorporate modern technologies into the village. But in November of 1961, one man would not be so lucky. Michael Rockefeller, the son of famous and incredibly wealthy New York governor, disappeared on an expedition to visit the Asmat people. He was apparently on the trip as he was looking to curate a collection of the local art from the isolated group to bring back to his family's museum in New York. But he would never make it back. Rockefeller was last seen swimming to the shore when his boat overturned, and for years, no one really knew what happened to him. But recently, author Carl Hoffman decided to dive into the tale and see what he could find. He revisited the exact location where Michael traveled all those years ago, and according to the locals he spoke with, they said, quote, "On shore, he saw familiar faces, those of the Otsjanup warriors. Instead of the rescue Rockefeller hoped for, he was stabbed in the ribs by one of the men, fatally killed in the precise actions of ritualistic headhunting and consumed by the warriors." Well, there you have it, friends. My name is Kennedy. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe. See you next time.